So hello everybody. So you know in logistics you have the first mile and the last mile. So now we're getting to the last leg, and that's instinct part. And then you have to fulfill. So that's what we're going to do now. So next we have a instant conversation and short presentations of well-known established companies. So what we see here, and Carlos will do the talking and do the moderation. So we know Heineken, very innovative. By the way, they also introduced Beer Wolf years ago, and I was quite closely related to that, what they have done. So there's also a lot of innovation in beer, but you'll hear more. And after that, we hear from Versuni, and that's a spin-off from Philips. So there's also a lot of innovation there. But I can reckon there are also a lot of challenges. So next, we're going to hear about those two companies with two great supply chain professionals, and Carlos will introduce them. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. So the first conversation is going to be with Wilko, and just interesting as we were talking between Pierre, that I will introduce later, and Wilko. Wilko is in charge of the planning function at Heineken, and actually it was Pierre saying, "My goodness, you have done a fantastic job in Heineken over the last years." So it's another, and I hear also a complaint. You are getting a lot of people that they got. So it looks like they are recruiting the best people in that sense. So now, apart from the jokes, it is true that Heineken has become not a kind of model, but they have a lot of models about the connected factory. They have a lot of things. So it's a fantastic opportunity to go deep a little bit into the best practices as Heineken has developed. So Wilko, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As today is all about innovation, I wanted to talk to you about how we innovate at Heineken and how we bring innovations, especially in the planning domain, to scale. Actually, I asked Scarlett Johansson to do the voicing today. I asked her 2 days ago, but she refused. So sorry for that. You have to listen to me. A bit less appealing, but I hope the content will make for that. And probably those challenges that I will talk to you about today in Heineken are not unique to Heineken. I think if you've been working with companies that are decentrally organized and multinational, you will probably have been facing similar challenges as we are facing still today. So to understand those challenges, let's have a look at how Heineken is organized and to better understand those challenges. Some numbers. So, as you might know, Heineken is the second biggest brewer globally, with the #1 position in Europe. We sell over 350 different brands, mainly in beer, but also in cider and in wine across the world. We sell over 240 million hectoliters every year. I did a bit of math, but that is 2,500 bottles or cans every second. Our footprint consists of operating companies in over 60 countries, but we also have quite a lot of countries where we have joint ventures or license operations, and we still do a lot of export to, for instance, the USA. Still is a large amount of our volume. What you can see also in this picture, actually, that the Heineken landscape is quite fragmented, right? So we've been growing the last 10, 20 years by mergers and acquisitions. And as a result, also our IT landscape is super fragmented. We have thousands of different applications in Heineken, and we are on a journey to standardize that and work with centrally, globally owned platforms. In planning, we have already started that journey 6, 7 years ago. So we're basically ahead of the game with implementing planning platforms in all our operating companies across the globe. This is not easy, however. On top of that, we actually have 3 different ERP systems still today. SAP being one of them, and only for SAP we have 40 different instances. So you can imagine if you want to connect your planning software to SAP, that actually is every time you need to do the integration again. Right. So this is my team, and this is the team that is working on building those planning capabilities across the globe. It's a team of about 50, 60 people, a mix of planning experts and technology experts from about 20 different nationalities. The role of this team is to develop and deploy planning capabilities to our operating companies all over the world. Once we have deployed those solutions, we are also responsible to support those opcos with continuous improvement of that capability. We are organized actually in around 5 sub-capabilities. So it's demand planning, supply planning, scheduling, material requirements planning, and the S&OP process. And next to that, we have a dedicated team that does network optimization or strategic planning, as we call it. Technology is at the center of all those capabilities, right? So we have various platforms that we use to deploy in our countries. And when we started this journey a long time ago, we were thinking, should we deploy single technology to every country all over the world, or are we going to tailor our solution to the needs and requirements of their various markets? I will get back to that later, but first I want to introduce another challenge we have next to the technology, and that's the various size of businesses that we have across the globe. Let me take 2 extremes. One is Mexico, where we produce around 100,000 hectoliters every day with 7 breweries. Size is half of Europe. Super mature, but also very complex with a wholesale operation that is integrated, which brings a lot of additional planning complexity to solve. On the other side, we have, for example, the Solomon Islands. They produce 100,000 hectoliters in a year. Fairly simple operation, don't make a lot of money either, right? Especially the absolute revenue is, of course, way less than Mexico. So they can also not afford the very expensive state-of-the-art solutions that Mexico can. So we decided a couple of years ago when we started this journey to tailor our solution to the various companies, operating companies that we have in Heineken. Not to make it very complex, but at least have 2 solutions next to each other. And next to that, we built an architecture that helps to scale that globally. So let me first go to the right here. So you see, let's say the Blue Yonder solution on the right top is the solution that we use in 5, 6, 7 opcos today. Very big, very complex opcos, and there's some room for local standardization of the template to allow for business reasons because of the size of those companies. On the other side, we have FutureMaster, which is a French supply chain planning company that we work for 30 years already together with, heavily standardized, heavy governance on the template, because we don't want to allow for any deviations in the template locally. If it's a business requirement, then we build it into the template and we deploy it again. A couple of things that you see on this slide. So with this architecture, so you see it actually there's a data integration layer that connects all of the inbound, let's say, flows of data from our core systems, from master data management into the planning system via that integration layer. And a small top thing on the right top is important as well. That's called the planning data model, which is part of our enterprise data model. So we standardized the planning data model completely to be able to facilitate the standardization of the integration to our integration layer. Now we are almost, let's say, we are deploying this, have deployed this in many countries. We get much more standardization. Now we are also actually able to innovate at scale. And I saw some Ames people here in the room today, but I'm happy to share that actually we are building some products that solve a specific business problem in a few countries, not everywhere. Some opcos really want really advanced MRP solution, which requires some optimization. We've built that product with the help of Ortec in Ames, and we easily deploy that now to the operating companies that need that. So now we have this in place. We are also able to build products and scale them much faster than we were able to do in the past. Next to this, you see Infor, which we use for our scheduling solutions. It was not easy, right? So this journey started in 2018 with Italy, which was a pilot, and it took a couple of years to get it live. By now, at the end of this year, we have 97% of the Heineken volume covered by a global planning platform, so either FutureMaster or Blue Yonder. And by the end of 2025, that will be 99%. And actually then the fun starts, because then we have the system and the landscape and the architecture in place to innovate stuff and scale it to the rest of the world. So then we can really capture the value of innovation. There are a few other challenges on the road. As said, right, we go to an operating company, to a country, and we really have to assess their local business needs, their local requirements. So we do heavy investment on their ways of working. And most of the time, the outcome is, guys, you need to change your process, right? Because we need to make sure that your way of working fits in that template. So only if business requirements are so heavy or legal requirements are there that we need to adjust the template, we will do so. But that requires a lot of change in the countries that we are deploying this technology. A second thing is, as I already said, right, we have to deal so far still with very different ERP systems, and that makes the integration and the data standardization of that every time a heavy project. Fortunately, today we are starting a huge transformation program in Heineken to build a single core ERP, which will be SAP, with a digital backbone around a lot of different platforms to standardize all of our core processes, so market to cash, demand to warehouse, etc., all the way in a similar way in Heineken. This will take another, I don't know, we just started 5 years or so, but that's the vision we have in mind, and the planning domain actually was ahead of that whole transformation, so we are already almost there. It's fair to say that if we would have had a single ERP system already, the transformation that we went through as planning would have been way easier, way faster, way cheaper than it has been so far. But it also brings a lot of benefits. It's worth it, I would say. A lot of those benefits, we expected to have, right? So as said, we are able to scale and to innovate much faster than we used to do in the past. And yes, there's a clear business case for centralizing planning technology. You have one global contract, you leverage the size of Heineken in those negotiations, and we build a single solution support organization, which we can labor arbitrage once that is ready. Another benefit actually of this is that we can centrally check compliance of processes and ways of working. So we can actually easily see which OpCo is using the tool in the right way and where we see inefficiencies in ways of working. So we help our operating companies to identify those losses and to make sure we continuously improve the way of working and planning. Also, there's much more cross-learning between operating companies, right? Because they work in the same way with the same tooling, so it's much easier to bring them together and they learn from each other. And also, mobility in terms of careers becomes easier because people can learn much quicker a new role in another country. It also allows for regionalization, as I call this, of planning functions. So what you see now actually is the rise of planning hubs in Heineken, where we basically consolidate, especially for the smaller operating companies, we move it out of that small operating company and we centralize that somewhere in the region. So next year we have our last region going to a planning hub, which is APAC, but once that is there, we have that in place, and that allows again for a next round of, because they want to standardize the way of working of all those OpCos as well, right? So another round of standardization and another round of efficiency that will bring. And last but not least, because of this, we are able to create central insights, which we did not have in the past, right? So if I now get a question from a procurement director, hey Wilko, what are we going to sell? How much cans are we going to sell until the end of the year? A few years ago, I could not answer that question. Today, it's a few clicks away, and we have that information. And if procurement is happy, I am happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you. So now what we're going to do, we are going to go with Pierre about Versuni, which for most of us is Philips Consumer Products. That was it. It's very interesting. I should say, as an old professor, one of my first cases was to write about Philips TVs. It was probably one of the best supply chains at that time. We're talking about many years ago. But there's still, there's a lot of challenges. So he is going to talk about some of the challenges. And we were actually remembering some of the old times and somehow some of the new challenges we are having. So thank you very much for being with us, Pierre.
Now you've been raising the expectations, right? I want to talk about circularity. And share some transferable learnings of stuff I've learned recently and also over the last years, right? Who I am, this guy, and the companies I've been working for, I realized that there has been an acceleration after 21 years of Unilever. There's been an acceleration in moving companies to company because I do specialize in supply chain transformation. That's what I've started doing in Carlsberg, and I've had a chance to work for fantastic businesses. And also as a consultant, so it's all there. My time at Carlsberg, we were looking at Heineken saying, these guys are really doing some cool stuff. They were the first invented the 0.0, which is one of the first biggest bestseller for those that don't drink alcohol like me. Couple of definitions just to go through very quickly, and I would like to show a bit of a paradox here. I was looking for official definition of sustainability, and I found a very good one on the United Nations website. It's there. The graphic comes from literature at Versuni. When I was looking at a definition for circularity, which is a key pillar, or the simple thing we can do in sustainability, there is no United Nations definition for it. The only one I found is a European definition from the European Parliament. And this is probably one of the things that we need to remember is whereas we're having a sustainability challenge at the global level, right, the answer will come from local levels. And this is this dilemma that I really want that we keep in the back of our mind, right? Our problem is global. Resolving it will be only done locally. We're in a fantastic theater, so I thought, what best than meeting my ex-team through a movie? Do I need to click to play the movie? I click, and here's the movie. I click again? Sorry. Once more. There is also sound somewhere.
Current global economic model is not sustainable. Levels of consumption are too high, and precious resources end up as waste or pollution. It's time to shift to a circular economy, reducing waste and using resources more effectively and with less environmental impact. At Philips, our strategy is aligned with UN Sustainable Development Goals 3, 12, and 13. Number 12 calls for sustainable consumption and production patterns. By 2025, we aim to generate 25% of our revenue from circular products, services, and solutions, with all our products and services being developed in line with eco-design requirements, minimizing environmental impact. We design for reuse, repair, and refurbishment from the outset. We adopt innovative business models based on offering our customers access to our products and solutions rather than ownership. This way, we can maximize the lifetime value of our products, optimize usage, and ensure that value is retained for as long as possible. By 2025, we will offer a trade-in on all professional medical equipment and take care of responsible repurposing. For instance, with our refurbishment facilities in the Netherlands and the United States. We are also working to become circular in our own operations. We are embedding circular practices at our sites, and by 2025, we'll put zero waste to landfill. Furthermore, we are building multi-stakeholder coalitions like PACE, the global platform for accelerating the circular economy. Only together can we drive the transition we need to make. Join us on the path to the circular economy. Healthy people need a healthy planet.
The route to circularity that Philips, now Royal Philips, started has always been already transmitted within Versuni. So when we did the spin-off of Philips Domestic Appliance, that was already embedded in our DNA. And we grew from there in putting circularity at the heart of everything we do. There is something they said in the video around we innovate for circularity. Since the 1st of July last year, this is effectively any innovation that comes on the marketplace from Philips Domestic Appliance, now Versuni, is effectively innovated for circularity at the very beginning, right? Which means we can open, we can change the spare parts, we can dispose properly of the equipment. So the transferable learnings that I wanted to put upon you today are six. First is around top-down and bottom-up, and managing that sort of conflict in strategizing and executing with granularity. I'm going to talk about it in a second. it's about how we incarnate the sustainability agenda and circularity agenda at the board level. Again, I want to put a bit of a maybe a question for you guys in terms of how we do board representation versus incarnation. We had a bit of that conversation earlier. I don't have a solution. I just know that is a dilemma. Also, I want to make the point about business cases, because our businesses are no charity, right? We are also paid for the bottom line. It needs to work hand in hand. Finally, not everything works, right? We talked about pilot, we talked about trying and failures earlier today. This is exactly the case when it comes to circular business models. And the last one is a plea to use data, starts with the consumer first when it gets to understanding what needs to be done from a circularity perspective, right? So first thing, strategize top-down, but execute with granularity. So my plea here is, when you look at circularity, is really to have a top-down perspective, right? And implement with the necessary specificity. We're going to talk about the fact that the markets, every market, countries, I mix market and countries, but it's a question of vocabulary, are very distinct. They need tailored approach, right? The way the customers behave, the legislation, the consumers, the existing initiative, the way the partners, competitions operate in the market will also dictate how you need to execute your circularity strategy, and it will be very different from how we operate in Brazil to how we operate in Germany, as an example. I can mention some business cases a bit later on. Second transferable piece for you is about this incarnation in the flesh. 10 years ago, there was little talk about sustainability. We went through a phase where we had chief sustainable officers, right, at the board level. And I went through a transformation, the last one in Versuni, where actually we say, no, you know what, you want to deal with circularity, you want to deal with sustainability and circularity, put it back into the functions. This is where it happens, right? It's the chief operating officer that needs to drive circularity, because it is within this function. And there is a lot of merit to this. Every board member now, I think, is conscious of sustainability and therefore circularity. But what happens is when push comes to shove and we operate in our functions and we have to hit the KPIs, you know exactly where the trade-offs are going to be made, right? So my plea here is also to drive again back for incarnation at the board level. I'm not sure we all need in our businesses to have chief supply chain officer, but somebody needs to be acting as a chief supply chain officer, because those trade-offs which are normally hidden within the function will come at the board level, right? The allocation of budget, the focus of the conversation on sustainability and circularity will happen at the board, not within the functions. So I use, with his permission, a quote of Wilko Sierksma, been the long time appointed for more than 10 years, CEO of DSM. Under his tenure, the value of the business, the share value of the business grew by 400%. And he used to say that doing well can go together with doing good. That has been his mantra in developing DSM, another fantastic Dutch company. I'm going to go further than Wilko, and I'm going to say that doing well must go with doing good. So this is the level of conversation we now need to have. Otherwise, our businesses will lose their license to operate, right? Our investors, it was said this morning, will prefer going to businesses that have a sustainability and circularity strategy. Our customers and our employees will prefer working for businesses that are more committed to sustainable practices. So super important, this incarnation. I've mentioned it. Oh, yes, businesses are no charity. Again, it's about the business case. And yeah, it is a bit boring. I heard this morning that in isolation, we can make every business work. Try to make a circularity business case to work. It is super complicated. Over the last 2-3 years, though, I've been able to witness and move with the teams on 3 different types of business case. The first one is we had in Brazil a pilot of a multi-brand cashback return. So we, as Versuni, Philips Domestic Appliance, sponsored the return of every air fryer from any brand in Brazil, and we give a cashback. And with this cashback, of course, we expect consumers are going to buy our products, right? This has generated increased penetration. So we had a sellout of 300% versus the year before. So the business case super positive. Behind this, we also had to put our lines to be able to deal with all these returns, dismantled the products, okay, and recycle properly and not in landfills, right? This is a piece that was mentioned in the Martijn Lofter's interview in the supply chain movement of December. Another pilot that we've been running is about enterprise-wide packaging redesign, where using the attract to rebrand ourselves as Versuni and generating the necessary visual recognition, we have starting using only recycled carton, printed only on 30% of the surface. So we have a 60% reduction of ink. We remove all the plastics within the boxes. If you buy now a vacuum iron from under the brand Philips, produced by Versuni, you will find no plastic in the packaging, no polystyrene. We have removed the books. It's all by QR, including the warranty. Everything has been replaced. And the reduction in the packaging size is by 30%. So imagine the cubic of every packaging that we redesign, and we've done 30% of it already in the last 2 years, reduced by 30%. You guys are all logisticians because your supply chain. I don't need to make the math. We're talking millions of euros of savings, right? The third business case is about nearshoring of kitting facility. Not going into details, but importing from a certain country to another country for selling generates a huge amount of import duties. Doing the kitting in a more friendly near-shore location alleviates the import duty, and therefore that generates the business case. And finally, another one is we've been scaling up local refurbishment in Europe. The business case is positive within 3 years, so we can generate full ROI within 3 years. 4 business cases that shows that if we take it seriously and we look for what works in a specific market under the global guidance of a strategy, we can find ways to make circularity work. Again, business cases are needed because business are not charity. Other thing is not everything works. We talked about this morning, right? Pilot and try and fail and do it again, right? In the example of our multi-brand cashback returns in Brazil, yes, the sellout evolution is 300%, not as big as we wanted, right? So we're probably not at zero. At the same time, that sort of mild success, or success if you want, generated 12 shareable learnings. And these 12 shareable learnings are around the importance of legislation on reverse logistics, how consumers behave. Some consumers in some markets are still skeptical when big corporations are doing this sort of like refunding, right? How does it work versus promotion? Circularity trends in refurb, the necessity to have the right recycling infrastructures in countries where it's developed or not, etc. And also the logistics in Brazil, as an example, we didn't know, but we learned very quickly that there is an interstate transport tax, which then add a cost to the CO2 emission impact, right? So one pilot, albeit probably successful, 12 shareable learnings. But the big thing is, over the last 2 years and a half, we ran 14 pilots. So we've learned 120, 130 different things that we can then use to reproduce the next thing. So not everything works. Pilot, fail, learn, share, and repeat. I'm a customer-driven guy. I mean, says my bio. Business-wide ambition starts with consumer at heart. So it's also a plea here to start doing researches and using data. I know it's super trendy what I say, right? I mean, it starts with the data. But markets are unique, right? They are distinct. They all need tailored approach. And I think there are three types of data which are very important. The first is internal stakeholders. They know a lot about the business. They know a lot about that have been tried. There is tribal knowledge. Not everything is documented. It is necessary to go ask the stakeholders. But more importantly, consumers. They are central to the strategy of circularity, because if we do it, it's because for them as consumers, but for us, we are also consumers, right? So we need to understand what ticks them, what works for them, and I guarantee you, what works for a consumer in France when it comes to circularity is not what works for a German consumer when it comes to circularity. Fundamentally different levers. So, 6 things. Top down and bottom out. The incarnation at board level, hoping that you guys can drive this in your businesses. Businesses are no charity, so the business case really, really drives. Not everything works. Be prepared to fail, be prepared to learn and to replicate what can. And finally, always start with consumer at heart. Through the data, it's the best. This is all I've got to say to you, and a bonus slide on the road to circular business model. That's my super uber simplification to how I want to do this and do it again and again when it comes to first driving the discovery, identifying opportunities, ideation and selection to actually secure through the stakeholders, the partners, the funding and etc. to actually developing the circular business models. That's all I have for you. I hope I was on time.
Perfect. Thank you.
And
Thank
we
you
get
very
back to
much,
this.
Pierre. Thank you.
This is the best piece of equipment
The
technology
best piece of
ever.
equipment, absolutely. So it's very interesting because both of you, we are talking about innovation in the supply chain. Both of you have a common theme about this consumer. You are talking about how do we plan, how do we make sure. We were talking before about how consumers are changing. And just to give you one example, so, and I was sharing that with Wilko, many of you have heard about this weight loss drug, which has created a company that is the most valuable company in Europe called Novo Nordisk. And actually, one of the things that is happening, it looks like people who are on this drug actually eats more healthy, eats less, and now there is a new trial trying to see if this is going to reduce the consumption of alcohol, which logically is going to influence. But the point is basically the consumers are very volatile. So what innovation do you need from the point of view, you have done a lot in planning, so that means you are much more reactive. What are the next things that you might think about that you would say will be great if we would have these things in supply chain in order to be able to react to this consumer that is going to change so often?
That's a very good question. To be honest, I don't have a lot of, let's say, so we talk a lot about customer centricity, right, in Heineken. And I think the challenge for us is to bring that conversation into our SNOP meeting, because I think that's what's lacking actually still today. So within supply chain, we see plenty of opportunities to improve. So a lot of innovations we do on optimizing whatever left or right, but bringing that voice of the customer into the supply chain, or actually in the SNOP meeting, in the supply chain conversation, is something that we are currently working on. Actually, 2 weeks from now, we have our supply chain conference here in Amsterdam with all the supply chain directors from all the opcos coming here. And this is one of the things that we are going to discuss with them. How do we make sure that we bring this into the conversation? Because I think, to be honest, it's not there yet.
So you are very reactive, you have fantastic processes, still you need the collaboration across the company to get that voice, and across companies to get that voice of the
What we
customer.
do in supply chain, maybe that's good to show, we do a lot of platform also in our product development, right? So in Europe, I think we had over 300 different bottles. We bring it down also for circularity, standardization reasons to, I think, 80 today. So having platforms in place in supply chain, standardization, that of course allows for much quicker innovation. So that is a way we deal with that. But I wouldn't say it's super strongly organized in Heineken yet.
Okay. If we talk about Versuni, there you're talking about circularity, you are talking about the circular solution that works in France, doesn't work in Germany because of the consumer. So the consumer actually is reacting in different ways. So if you look at from that point of view, are we going to go to a less standardization? We want to standardize, but actually that's driving the country. What's the dilemma we face there?
And I think it's there is a multi-layer conversation here. The first is customers are go-to market. They are the gatekeepers to the market. That's one thing. We try to tend not to want to play much more in B2B and all try our D2C experiences, right? So we try to get to the consumer also directly, which, by the way, are not always the shopper. So we need to understand these 3 layers before we get there. Ultimately, I believe that our latest years are showing a lot of individualization, right? We went through the steps of convenience to I want it now and I want it immediately, and eventually we need to get to a point where we're going to give it to you before you ask for it, right? I'm not sure how we're going to do this. It's a massive change. I think technology is helping us a lot. We're probably at the beginning of the next cycle or the next revolution. Today, yes, we are confronted with our ambition as businesses to go back to pre-COVID supply chain situation, and that's why we drive very hard to KPIs, which are the usual one, right? I mean, we need to have lower cost per hectoliters or lower cost by containers or whatever you sell. It doesn't really matter. And at the same time, we have a counterforce of this individualization of the needs of the consumers. The equation will be probably fundamentally different from a Heineken to a Versuni. I'm not sure the cursor is going to be at the same place, right? But what Wilko was mentioning around, we have got less different shapes of bottles. Yes, we also are trying to manage less different types of vacuum cleaner because this is where we recoup our cost. But I think our consumers will want to still have it when they need it. And then this is where we need to push.
If we look precisely a little bit at this deglobalization or globalization, we are much more interestingly net. In both cases, you say you have not one solution, which everybody in IT will say, no, I want just one. And you say, now we have 2 depending on the market. The interesting thing is that, and you were talking about nearshoring and so on, we are going away of that. What are the needs from a supply chain point of view that you see now? Because the solution you presented, actually, honestly, if you're an IT expert, you will say, no, this is not the way to go. You will say, no, I don't want. I want just that one. And if somebody, I hope that nobody from SAP is here, because what I'm going to say probably is a SISMA. The SAP guys will tell you, you are going to have just one system. That's the wonder of our ERP. You have one system for everything. What you presented is a patchwork of these are the best solutions. So from that point of view, if you are a startup, how do you fit into that complex map? What are the kind of startups? What would they need to tell you in order for you to be interested on their solution?
So I think with that landscape, once that is in place, right? So maybe just to elaborate a bit. So we go for a very lean core ERP system. Then we have platforms in place on processes that we have, like supply chain, but also promo planning, financial planning, etc. All of that we'll deploy to all our operating companies. And then that next layer is, I think, where the innovation is, which we call products. And that are specific, tailored solutions that solve a business problem, right? So there should always be a use case which we can link to the technology. And I think that is where we, and let's say call out also to the room, we always start from a use case, right? So, and we don't know all the, we don't know you're also consumers, right? So we don't know them also that well. So helping us to create insights in what consumers want, what supply chains need, to sharpen the conversation about what actually is the use case and what is it, because we really need to deepen and understand that thing. And then the next step is building a solution to that. But I think that's the first step. And I think there we can definitely use help and more outside-in view on to solve those kind of problems.
So you're looking for the use case. That's what's going to convince you. In your case, if you talk about circularity?
Same thing. It goes back to what we said this morning and that Wilko is repeating and that I've tried to exemplify a bit earlier. It's what problem are we trying to resolve, right? What is the question that we have to answer? And depending on the maturity of the business and where we are in whichever transformation cycle we are, the questions are different. So Versuni went through a full-blown SAP 62 modules implementation from scratch as we exited Royal Philips after the spin-off. We've done this in 21 months, putting everything we had behind it. Once this is fixed, and it will take another series of quarters before all our basics are in place, this is where you can go to the next level, right? I mean, it's not we can't do everything at the same time. I wouldn't say fix the basics because we're always, we're supply chain guys, right? We fix basics every day, right? But there is a level within the basics that allows us to maybe shave some money out of the big transformation to actually put it into the more digital. And this is where I would say all the innovation, all the startups, all the brilliant minds of this world that bring the tech and provide a solution with the new tech, this is their moment. But it's not happening at the same time for Heineken, it's happening for Versuni, right? We need to be able to articulate this, they need to understand this. It's not a one size fits all. So it's not because I say, no, you can't come for a meeting that I am a bad guy, it's just that it's not the right moment.
Not the right timing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you. And with this, I will finish basically quoting a countryman of mine, a guy called Pablo Picasso, who said at some point in time, computers are useless. They can only answer questions. Our job is basically to ask the right question. So thank you very much, and I'll go back to you. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.